The night sky above the valley was quiet, filled with cold stars that looked down on broken stone houses and silent fields. Ethan moved carefully along the cracked road, the sound of his boots echoing faintly. He was used to silence now. Humanity had been reduced to whispers, their cities burned, their people scattered. He thought he was the last one, and most days he believed it. The war had not been kind, and the world had changed faster than any man could understand. The first time Ethan had seen the alien giants, he had not believed his own eyes. They were tall, elegant, and terrifying, standing nearly 8 feet high, with bodies that looked both graceful and strong. Their skin glowed with faint colors under the sun, their eyes sharp and unblinking. They had come as conquerors, but not just for land or wealth. Their reasons were older, stranger, tied to cycles of survival and instincts that had nothing to do with humans. That night, he reached what used to be a small village. Most houses were broken, their roofs fallen in, walls cracked from the blasts of alien weapons. He stepped over shattered wood and broken stone until he found a corner still standing. Inside, he laid his pack down and sat with his back against the cold wall. The wind outside was sharp, cutting through the ruins like a blade. He closed his eyes for a moment, hoping for a few hours of sleep, but the silence broke. A heavy sound pressed into the ground, soft but clear, like something large moving slowly through the dark. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He held his breath, his hand tightening around the piece of metal pipe he kept as a weapon. The steps grew closer, too measured to be an animal. His heart pounded. Then she appeared. She stepped into the broken house, as if the walls meant nothing, ducking slightly under the frame. She stood taller than any human woman he had ever seen, her form lit by the moonlight spilling through the broken roof. Her skin was violet, smooth, almost glowing. Her eyes burned with a strange light, not cruel but intense, fixed only on him. Her long hair, crimson like fire, fell down her back as she straightened to her full height. Ethan froze. Every instinct told him to run, but his body would not obey. She was too close, too real. And something about her presence felt different from the alien soldiers he had seen before. She wasn't armored, wasn't holding a weapon. Her breathing was heavy, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed strained. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with a look he could not understand. The air grew heavier, and Ethan suddenly realized what he was facing. He had heard rumors whispered by the last survivor stories of the alien cycles, the strange times when their kind changed, when instincts pushed them into hunts not of war, but of need. He had laughed at those stories, dismissing them as fear-driven tales. But now, looking at the giantess before him, the truth pressed against him like a storm. Her eyes narrowed as if she sensed his thoughts. She took a step closer, and he backed against the wall, gripping his makeshift weapon tighter. But she did not attack. Instead, she crouched down, her face drawing near to his. Ethan could see every detail now, the faint lines across her cheekbones, the glow in her pupils, the heat radiating from her skin. She looked not like a beast, but like something caught between hunger and curiosity. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and heavy, filled with strange music, yet sharp enough to make his skin prickle. "You are human." Ethan's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to answer. "Yes, I'm the last." Her eyes searched him as if weighing his truth. A strange sound left her throat, not a laugh but something close. She leaned closer, and he felt the heat of her breath. Her size, her power, her intensity, all of it made him feel small, but he refused to look away. "You survived," she said. "Good." The way she said it sent a shiver through him. It was not praise. It was recognition. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, tried to think. Every story he had heard said the same thing. During their cycle, they chose. They hunted. And once chosen, there was no escape. His chest tightened as he realized the truth of his situation. The alien giantess leaned back slightly, her gaze never leaving his face. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by the wind outside. Then she extended her hand, palm open, large enough to cover his chest with ease. It was not a demand. It was an invitation, or perhaps a command he could not refuse. Ethan stared at her hand, at the faint glow that ran along her veins, pulsing with each beat of her heart. His thoughts raced. He could fight, but it would be pointless. He could run, but she would catch him in seconds. Or he could stay, face what she wanted, and hope he survived. The giantess spoke again, softer this time, but with a weight that filled the ruined house. "Human, you are mine now." Ethan's grip on the pipe loosened. He had no answer, only the sharp pull of fear and the strange, unexplainable spark that her words lit inside him. Ethan sat frozen, his eyes locked on the giantess in front of him. The ruins around them felt smaller now, as if the whole world had narrowed to her glowing form and her outstretched hand. His breathing was heavy, his heart hammering in his chest. He had seen aliens before, but none had stood so close. None had spoken to him with a voice that carried both command and need. Her hand stayed steady, waiting. Her long fingers twitched slightly, almost impatient. Ethan's throat was dry. He told himself not to move, not to give in, but his body betrayed him. Slowly, almost against his will, his hand lifted and brushed against hers. The warmth that met his skin startled him. She was burning hot, as if fire lived beneath her skin. The giantess's eyes softened the instant he touched her. Her lips curved, not quite a smile but something close. She leaned forward, her crimson hair sliding over her shoulders like a sheet of flame. Ethan wanted to pull back, but her hand closed gently around his, dwarfing it completely. Her grip was firm, unyielding, but not crushing. "You are alive," she said again, her voice low, almost to herself. "And you are mine." Ethan forced his voice to work. What do you mean?" "Why me?" Her head tilted, her gaze piercing. "Because there are no others. And my cycle has begun." The words sank into him like stone dropping into deep water. He had heard of this whispered stories that spoke of alien cycles, seasons where instincts ruled them, when their kind became hunters of more than war. Those stories had ended with humans disappearing, taken into the shadows of alien strongholds. He had never thought they were real. Until now. She stood taller, releasing his hand, but her presence pressed against him even more than before. Ethan realized with sudden clarity that she wasn't going to leave. She had chosen him, and that meant something he did not fully understand, but he knew it bound him. The giantess looked around the broken house, her eyes narrowing. She made a sound low in her throat, disapproving, and then turned back to him. "Not safe. You come." Her words were simple, but her tone left no room for argument. She bent down suddenly, lifting him before he could react. Ethan's feet left the ground, his body cradled easily in her arms as though he weighed nothing. He shouted in surprise, struggling instinctively, but her grip only tightened slightly enough to remind him resistance was useless. "Stop," she said firmly. "I will not hurt you." Her eyes met his, and something in them silenced him. They burned with intensity, but there was no cruelty there. Instead, he saw need, urgency, and a strange kind of vulnerability hidden beneath all that power, carrying him. She stepped out of the ruined house and into the night. The cold wind rushed against him, but her warmth was so strong it almost shielded him from the chill. She moved quickly, her long legs covering ground with ease. The village fell away behind them, and soon they were climbing the edge of the valley, the stones crunching under her feet. Ethan glanced up at her face as the moonlight struck her features. She looked fierce and otherworldly, but also alive in a way that unsettled him. He realized this wasn't just about survival. She needed something more, something she believed only he could give. At last, she stopped near a cave hidden by jagged rocks. She set him down carefully, her glowing eyes never leaving him. He stumbled back a step, But she caught his arm, steadying him. "You stay here," she said. "Safe." Ethan looked into the darkness of the cave, then back at her. "Safe from what?" She scanned the horizon, her crimson hair whipping in the wind. "Others, they will smell me. They will smell you. They will come." The weight of her words struck him. He wasn't just chosen, he was now marked. And if others of her kind were near, then danger was coming faster than he imagined. He swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" The giantess turned back to him. For a moment, her face softened, almost human in its expression. She reached out, her finger brushing lightly along his chest, as if feeling his heartbeat. "Now," she said quietly, "you survive with me." Ethan felt a chill run through him at her words. Not survive against her. Not survive in spite of her. Survive with her. The meaning was clear. His life was no longer his alone. He sat at the mouth of the cave as she watched the horizon like a sentinel, her body glowing faintly in the night. His mind swirled with fear, confusion, and a strange, unwanted pull toward her presence. The war had left him broken, the world nearly empty, yet somehow his fate had crossed with hers at this moment. The giantess looked down at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. She spoke again, her voice soft but carrying the weight of an oath. "You will not die, human. Not while I breathe." Ethan had no answer. He only sat in silence, listening to the steady rhythm of her breath and the restless wind outside. The cave was dark, but Ethan could still see the faint glow that seemed to shine from the giantess's skin. She stood at the entrance, tall and motionless, her eyes scanning the night as if nothing could escape her sight. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant cry of wind and the sound of her steady breathing. Ethan sat on a stone near the wall, his arms wrapped around his knees, trying to make sense of what had happened. Hours ago, he was alone, believing he was the last human alive. Now, an 8-foot alien had carried him away from the ruins and declared that he belonged to her. His mind spun in circles, part of him wanting to fight, another part realizing he had no choice. Her strength was absolute, but it wasn't her power alone that kept him still. It was her eyes, her voice, the strange weight of her presence that made him hesitate. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "If others come, what will they do to me?" She turned her head, her crimson hair brushing across her shoulder. "They will take. They will fight me for you." The words chilled him. "Why?" Her gaze softened for the first time since they had met. "Because you are rare. Because my cycle burns inside me. They will want what I have chosen. They will not stop." Ethan let out a shaky breath. He had survived soldiers, raids, and hunger, but this was different. He wasn't fighting for food or shelter. Now he was fighting against something much larger, something primal and unstoppable. He looked at her again, her tall frame glowing faintly in the shadows, and felt the truth settle deep inside him. She wasn't just protecting him. She was claiming him. "Why me?" He asked again, softer this time. The giantess crouched slowly, bringing her face level with his. Her features were sharp, alien, yet strangely beautiful in the dim light. "Because you are strong. You lived when others died. That strength calls to me. My blood answers it." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning Ethan could barely understand. He opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden sound outside froze them both. The crunch of rock. A faint, guttural call that echoed across the valley. The giantess rose instantly, her body tense. Her glowing eyes hardened as she stepped forward, her silhouette filling the mouth of the cave. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest. He moved closer to the wall, gripping the pipe he had carried for months. Even though he knew it was useless, from the darkness outside came shapes tall, looming, with eyes that burned in the night. More of her kind. Ethan counted 3, maybe 4, their movements slow and deliberate. They stopped just beyond the cave, their glowing forms shifting in the shadows. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, his voice deep and commanding. "Sorai," the alien said, his strange accent thick but clear. "You have taken him." "Given to us." Ethan's eyes darted to the giantess. Sorai, so that was her name. She did not move. She stood tall, her shoulders squared, her crimson hair flowing down her back. Her voice rang out sharp and firm. "He is mine." The others growled low, the sound rumbling like thunder. The leader stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Ethan. "The human belongs to the cycle. Not to you alone. Share him, or we will take him." Ethan's blood ran cold. He pressed back against the wall, his chest tightening as panic clawed at him. He wasn't just prey, he was the prize of a fight he could not stop. Sarai's voice cut through the night. "No." The word was simple, but it carried such power that even the others paused. She stepped fully into the open, towering at the cave's edge. Her skin glowed brighter, the markings along her body pulsing with energy. She spread her arms slightly, her claws curling at her sides. "You will not touch him." The air crackled with tension. The aliens hissed, their movements sharp, their hunger clear. Ethan gripped his pipe tighter, though his hands shook. He knew he was useless here, but instinct told him to be ready anyway. Sarai glanced back at him once, her glowing eyes locking onto his. For a brief moment, he saw something beyond fury in her expression, something protective, almost desperate. Then she turned back to the others, her body crouched low, ready to strike. Ethan swallowed hard, realizing the truth. The war wasn't over. It had only changed its shape. And now, he wasn't just a survivor, he was the center of it. The night erupted with the sound of alien voices, the clash of bodies too fast and powerful for human eyes to follow. Ethan pressed himself deeper into the cave, his heart pounding as dust and stone rained down from the ceiling. He had wanted silence, peace, a chance to live unnoticed. Instead, he had become the spark of something far more dangerous. And as he watched Sarai's glowing form collide with her rivals under the moonlight, one thought burned in his mind. She wasn't going to let them take him, not while she still breathed. The clash outside the cave was like thunder. Ethan pressed himself deeper into the shadows, the noise of growls, strikes, and heavy crashes shaking the ground beneath him. Sparks of light flared each time Sarai's glowing claws met the others. Dust rained from the cave roof, and the air felt thick with heat and violence. Through the chaos, Ethan caught glimpses of her. Sarai moved with terrifying grace, her tall frame faster than he thought possible. She leapt, spun, and struck, her crimson hair flying like a banner of fire. Each movement was fueled not just by strength, but by something deeper, primal and urgent. She was fighting not only for dominance, but for him. One of the rival aliens lunged at her, its claws aimed at her throat. Sarai twisted, caught the attack with one arm, and slammed her opponent into the rocks. The stone cracked, sending fragments flying. Another rushed in from the side, but she lashed out with a kick that sent it sprawling into the dirt. The leader came last, his power greater, his body glowing brighter. Their clash shook the valley, each strike echoing like metal on metal. Ethan gripped his pipe, his knuckles white. He knew he couldn't fight them. He was too small, too weak, but part of him wanted to run out, to help somehow, even if it meant nothing. But his body wouldn't move. Fear held him, but so did awe. He had never seen anything like her. She wasn't just surviving the battle. She was dominating it. Minutes passed like hours until finally the air grew still. The rivals, bloodied and beaten, pulled back, their glowing eyes filled with frustration. The leader snarled, his voice carrying through the valley. "This is not finished, Sarai. The cycle has only begun. He cannot be yours alone." With a final growl, they retreated into the darkness, their footsteps fading until silence returned. Sarai stood at the cave's mouth, her chest rising and falling, her body glowing faintly with each heavy breath. Blood streaked her arm, but her posture never faltered. She looked powerful still, her eyes sharp, her expression unbroken. Slowly she turned back toward Ethan. He rose to his feet, his heart hammering. You fought them off." Her lips curved slightly, almost like a smile. "They will come again. But not tonight." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes tracing the marks on her arm where blood ran down. Without thinking, he moved toward her, pulling a scrap of cloth from his pocket. She tilted her head, watching him curiously as he reached for her arm. When the cloth touched her skin, he felt the heat radiating from her again, hotter now, like a fire burning just under the surface. "You're hurt," he muttered. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. "It is nothing," but she let him continue. He pressed the cloth against the wound, wiping away the blood. Her skin was smooth, almost too perfect, and the glow beneath it pulsed like veins filled with light. Ethan tried to keep his hand steady, though his mind raced. Why was he helping her? Why did she let him? When he finished, she leaned slightly closer, her eyes fixed on his face. "You care," she said softly, almost as if surprised. Ethan swallowed. "You saved me. I can't just ignore that." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air was heavy, filled with more than words. Then Sarai's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "The others will not stop. They will smell you. They will chase us both. But I will not give you to them." Ethan's chest tightened. He should have been terrified, and he was. But mixed with the fear was something else, an odd sense of safety, even belonging. He had been alone for so long, hiding from everything. Now, against all reason, this towering alien had fought for him, shielded him, and bound his life to hers. He lowered the bloodied cloth, his eyes meeting hers. "Then I guess I'm with you." Her gaze softened, and for the first time, a true smile flickered across her lips. "Yes," she whispered. "With me." That night they sat by a small fire just inside the cave, the glow casting strange shadows on the walls. Sarai rested near the entrance, her body tense even in stillness, while Ethan sat across from her, the warmth of the flames mixing with the strange warmth he felt from her presence. For the first time in years, Ethan did not feel completely alone. The war, the loss, the silence, all of it had led him here. To her. And though danger still circled beyond the cave, though more battles were certain, he felt a spark of something he hadn't known in a long time. Hope. The fire inside the cave burned low, but it was enough to chase away the cold. Ethan sat close to it, his eyes drifting off into the figure at the entrance. Sarai crouched there, her tall frame half lit by the flames, her glowing eyes fixed on the night outside. Her posture was tense, every muscle ready, but there was a calmness in her stillness, like a predator waiting for the right moment to move. Ethan had wrapped himself in his old jacket, though the truth was he barely needed it. The heat that radiated from Sarai filled the space like a second fire. Even with distance between them, her warmth reached him, reminding him of what she was, something more than human, something stronger, stranger, and frighteningly alive. Hours passed. At last, Sarai turned her gaze back to him. "You have questions," she said simply. Ethan blinked, startled by her sudden words. "Of course I do. You pulled me out of the ruins, you fought your own kind for me, and now you say I'm yours. What am I supposed to think?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Think that you live. Because of me." "I know that," Ethan admitted, rubbing his face. "But I don't understand why. Why risk yourself? Why fight them when you could have let them take me?" Sarai stepped closer, her tall shadow spilling across the firelight. She crouched again, lowering herself until her glowing eyes were level with his. "Because my cycle burns. Because I choose. Others smell you, they want you, but I was first. You belong to me." The words sent a shiver through Ethan. They were heavy, final, spoken with a certainty that left no room for doubt. Yet there was no cruelty in her tone, only truth. He swallowed. "And what if I don't want that?" For a moment, Silence filled the cave. Sarai's eyes searched his, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned back slightly, her voice dropping to a low rumble. You do not lie well, human. Your fear is strong, but beneath it, you are curious. Ethan opened his mouth to deny it, but the words caught in his throat. She wasn't wrong. Something about her unsettled him, but not only with fear. When she fought for him, when she bled and stood tall against her own kind, a spark had lit inside him. A spark that confused him as much as it terrified him. He turned away, staring into the fire. You make it sound like I have no choice. Sarai's voice softened. You always have choice. Run, and they will catch you. Stay, and I will keep you. Her words settled deep in him, sharper than any blade. She wasn't trapping him. She was offering him survival, but at a price he didn't yet understand. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from outside, pulling her attention back to the valley. Her body stiffened, her claws flexing. Ethan froze, listening. The sound came again, deeper, heavier, like the growl of something vast. What is that? He whispered. Sarai rose to her full height, her eyes glowing brighter. Not my kind. Another beast. Drawn by the blood, Ethan's chest tightened. Is it dangerous? Yes, she said. Then, after a pause, stay behind me. She stepped to the mouth of the cave, her tall frame blocking the night. Outside, the sound grew louder, followed by the crack of stones shifting. Ethan gripped his pipe again, useless though it was. He hated feeling so powerless, but he couldn't stop himself. Then the beast appeared. It was massive, four-legged, its body covered in black scales that reflected the moonlight. Its eyes glowed faintly green, its jaw lined with sharp teeth. It sniffed the air, its head swinging toward the cave. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Sarai growled low in her throat, the sound almost matching the creature's. Her body glowed brighter, her claws extended. She stepped forward, unafraid. The beast lunged. The impact shook the ground, and Sarai met it head-on. They crashed together, the sound of claws and teeth echoing across the rocks. Ethan scrambled back, his eyes wide as he watched her grapple with the monster. She moved like a storm, striking and dodging. But the beast was massive, stronger than the rival she had fought before. Ethan's mind screamed at him to stay hidden, to let her fight. But another voice rose inside him, the same voice that had kept him alive when the world fell apart. He couldn't just sit and watch. His eyes darted to the fire. A thick branch burned there, glowing red at the tip. Without thinking, he grabbed it, the heat searing his hand. He ran to the edge of the cave, lifted the burning branch, and shouted as loud as he could. The beast turned its head toward him, distracted for a split second. Sarai seized the moment. She struck with both claws, driving them deep into its throat. The monster thrashed, then collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. For a moment, the valley was silent again. Sarai stood over the beast, her chest heaving, blood dripping from her claws. She looked back at Ethan, her eyes burning bright. You are brave, she said. Ethan dropped the branch, his hand shaking from the heat. Or stupid, her lips curved in the faintest smile. Both, but you are mine. Ethan had no answer. He only sank against the cave wall, his body trembling, while Sarai stood tall above the fallen beast, her glowing form blazing in the moonlight. The valley lay silent after the beast's fall. Its huge body stretched across the rocks, black scales cracked where Sarai's claws had struck deep. The smell of blood and smoke hung in the air. Ethan sat against the cave wall, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. His burned hand still stung, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. Sarai stood over the carcass, her tall frame glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her body was streaked with blood, her crimson hair tangled, yet she looked unbroken like a warrior carved from fire and stone. Slowly, she turned back toward him. You faced it, she said softly. Even small, even weak, you faced it. Ethan shook his head. I only distracted it. You killed it. Her eyes narrowed, almost amused. That is enough. You are not prey. You stand with me. The words settled deep in him. For weeks, months, he had lived only to survive, hiding from everything, believing he was the last human left. Now here he was, standing at the side of an alien giantess who claimed him as hers, who fought for him as if his life was as precious as her own. But reality pressed in. The others will come back, won't they? He asked quietly. Sarai stepped closer, crouching until her glowing eyes met his. Yes, they will not stop. But they will not take you. Even if I must fight them all, I will keep you. Her voice carried no doubt, only certainty. Ethan stared at her, his heart pounding. Why? He asked. Why risk everything for me? Sarai tilted her head, studying him. Then, slowly, she touched his chest with one finger, right where his heart beat. Because I choose. Because my cycle burns, and I will not give you away. Ethan felt her warmth through his shirt, and for the first time, he didn't pull back. He had been running for so long, hiding from enemies, from fear, even from himself. But sitting there, with her words echoing in the cave, he realized something. He wasn't running anymore. That night, they stayed together in the cave. Sarai kept watch, her body a shield against whatever stalked the valley. Ethan drifted in and out of restless sleep, waking often to see her still there, glowing faintly in the dark, her eyes always turned outward, guarding him. When morning came, the valley was painted in gold. Ethan rose stiffly, his body aching, but Sarai was already outside, standing tall against the light. She looked back at him, her face unreadable. We move, she said. They left the cave, climbing higher into the mountains. The air grew colder, thinner, but Sarai moved without hesitation, guiding him along paths he would never have found alone. At times she offered her hand to steady him, her massive fingers closing gently around his. At other times, she simply lifted him when the climb grew too steep, carrying him as though he weighed nothing. Hours passed until they reached a ridge that overlooked the valley. From there, Ethan saw movement far below, shapes like shadows, glowing faintly in the daylight. More of her kind, spreading across the land. His chest tightened. There were too many. They're searching, he whispered. Sarai's jaw tightened. Yes, they will not stop until one of us is dead. Ethan's hands shook as he gripped the edge of the rock. Then what chance do we have? Sarai turned to him, her crimson hair flowing in the wind. Alone, little, together. Enough. Ethan looked up at her, really seeing her, not just the size, not just the power, but the fierce will that burned in her. She wasn't just protecting him out of instinct. She had chosen him, and now he understood something he hadn't before. It wasn't only her cycle binding them. It was survival, shared and unbroken. For the first time he straightened, meeting her gaze without fear. Then we fight together. Her lips curved in the faintest smile, but her eyes softened in a way that almost made her look human. Yes, together. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the land. The enemies below spread out, searching. But on the ridge above them stood an unlikely pair, an alien giantess in the fire of her cycle and the last human alive. Ethan tightened his grip on the pipe still strapped to his side, useless though it was. He wasn't strong like her, wasn't glowing with strange power. But he was alive, and for the first time in years, he had something worth fighting for. Sarai stood tall beside him, her body glowing brighter as the heat of her cycle surged. She lifted her head, her voice carrying across the ridge like a vow. They will come. Let them. You are mine, and I will not let you go. Ethan's chest filled with something he hadn't felt since the war began. Not just fear, not just survival, but a strange, burning courage. He looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled. Then let's make them regret it. The wind whipped around them as they stood side by side, ready for whatever came next. And in that moment, Ethan knew the truth. He was no longer just the last human alive. He was part of something greater, something fierce and unbreakable. Together, they would survive.